Hi YouTube, this is Joe Calton with Calton Cutlery. Calton Cutlery. You can find me on the web, caltoncutlery.com. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about probably the most important, well maybe not the most important, everything's always the most important, but a very important part of your forging setup, and that is the anvil stand. Okay, you can work on a piece of railroad track anvil or a piece of mild steel, for an anvil, or an actual anvil, like a nice one like this. But if your anvil stand sucks, your anvil's gonna suck. It's just the way it is. Anvils are supposed to be as heavy as you can get them. Well, your stand actually makes up part of the weight of the anvil. So the anvil and the stand combined, that's the weight that you want to be as much as you can get. Alright? More weight in the anvil and stand provide a more solid base for your forging. When I first started forging, I had, like a whole bunch of other guys, I'm pretty sure, I had a section of railroad track. It was kind of sort of flat on the top, and I had it staked down or chained down to a basically a stump, a wooden stump, and it was horrible. You'd hit your steel on the anvil and the whole thing would bounce and move all over the place. That old piece of track would ring so hard that it felt like it was going to make your ears bleed, even through earplugs. And then I finally, before I got this anvil, I went to a chunk of 2-inch thick, I don't know, probably, well, it was kind of like this right here. Just a chunk of mild steel plate. And what I did was I took that and I built a plywood and 2x4 box like this, filled it up with concrete. Now, my old one was about twice this size. And I set that thing to about this, probably 2/3 of the way into the concrete. And that was my anvil. And it actually worked really, really well for a bladesmith anvil. The only drawback was that there was no hardy hole. Not having a horn, I don't really use the horn all that much. But having nice square sides and a mostly flat face, set in that big old thing with the concrete, boy, it was really nice and quiet. It was soft, so you did have to dress it on a pretty regular basis, but it made a great bladesmithing anvil. So anyway, when I found this one, at one of the local salvage yards, and I want to say, I asked the guy what he wanted for it, and he said $100, and man, I couldn't get the money out of my pocket fast enough to get to it. So when I brought it home, I went ahead and I built the same anvil base that I did for my little mild steel anvil, and boy, it just worked really well. So what I did was I took, it looks like about 3/4 inch plywood and 2x4s, and I built an open top box with a floor on it, of course, so that I didn't stick the new concrete to the concrete floor of the shop. Poured the thing full of concrete. I want to say I did it in 2 sections, so I might have filled it up to, here or so on the first pour, and then let that set up for a couple of days, and then poured the top portion, and then set the anvil into the concrete while the concrete was still wet. Kind of mushed it all up around there so that the anvil doesn't want to slide. It's locked in place. Now, if you lift up on it, now after a couple of years of forging on it, the feet will tend to come up a little bit, but this anvil is, I don't know, 200, 250 pounds, so, and you don't put a whole lot of upwards force on them very often. Anyway, so there's a couple of 100 pounds worth of concrete in there, in addition to the couple 100 pounds worth of anvil, so it makes a really, really solid base. Now this one, and if you decide to build one also, it'll be the same. Shop floors aren't always completely level. So you can take some shims and stick them up underneath one corner to kind of level them out, before you start working. This one, I can move it up there if I need to, if I need more space in the shop, but I don't move it very often. and honestly it's kind of a pain in the butt to move. I typically have it pointed this way, the horn pointed towards me, because I like to, let's say I'm working on a blade here, you know, I like to forge in bevels on these corners right here, and this is pretty close to where all the mass is. But anyway, this is a video on anvil stands. So anyway, so we've got, you know, something here that weighs, you know, 500-600 pounds. I'm not sure how many sacks of concrete I used. So it's a pretty solid immovable object in my shop. So when I picked up the post vise, and I never did get around to making a spring for this, I mounted the post vise to the anvil stand. Mounted the jaws to where they're slightly below the level of the anvil, and it works really good. So if you ever have to do any hard bending or something, or you know, prying, or you know, whatever, that post vise, and all it is I took a piece of leaf spring. I just kicked you there. Took a piece of leaf spring, straightened it out, heated up, and bent a spot right there in it to where it would go around one of the legs of the, or one of the jaws of the post vise. And then on the bottom, kind of did the same thing, and then had to cut part of the leg off, you know, to get it to the right height. And then I saved the end of the leg in case I ever wanted to actually attach it to a post. I can just weld it back on. But you can see the sides of the box being made out of plywood. You can hammer nails in there and hang, you know, hardy tools, hammers. There's my copper hammer. The other side, got more nails to store tongs. And then on the top, you can see part of the concrete in there with underneath the slag. You know, I keep some chisels and stuff. There's the concrete in there. Big old magnet, speaker magnet mounted to the side of the anvil. On this side right here, let me move this stump out of the way. On this side here, I've got my version of the third hand helper for blacksmiths. So there's kind of the overall view of it. And we've got one of the dog's play balls is out here. So anyway, this is just a chunk of square tubing, large square tubing that I found at the salvage yard. Welded a handle onto it, and then drilled a hole and bolted an eye bolt with a big old spring right there. Something like a trampoline spring would work really good. And it'll hold, you know, let's say you want to, you know, cut something or punch something, you know, you can put it up underneath there and it holds it pretty good. I mean, not really like super tight, but usually tight enough that you can do your work with it. And it's just set in the bottom there, in another eye bolt in the 2x4. And I want to say that's about it for this video. So remember, when you finally do find an anvil, I know I've got a buddy right now that's looking for an anvil, and we haven't been able to find him one. Come pretty close on a couple. I think with the whole forged and fire thing, and everybody getting into forging, blacksmithing, knife making, that sort of thing, that anvils are getting kind of scarce. So I think we're probably going to set him up on the rectangular piece of mild steel type of anvil if we can't find him a good one pretty soon. But once you do find your anvil and you bring it home, put some serious thought into, you know, what your anvil stand is going to look like. You know, the whole just setting the anvil on a stump, you know, I've got my spare anvil over here that I'll probably use one of these days for like traveling, if I ever decide to go to like a hammer in or something. Got the chainsaw boxes next to it. Got this big old piece of burl that I picked up out of a buddy's firewood pile. So I'm still cutting up the burl, and that's just a small section of it. The rest of it's there's probably, well, the stump's about 5 foot diameter and about 5 foot tall, and that right there is only, I don't know, maybe 2 foot wide at the widest point from here to here. 2 foot wide and maybe 18 inches tall, something like that. So it's a pretty small piece of it. Let's get you back over here. Anyway, got my spare traveling anvil. One of these days I'll start doing like you know, the hammer ends and stuff. And you don't really want to carry your monster anvil everywhere. You want something that's a little bit smaller and easier to move around. But anyway, so if you are, once you do find your anvil and you bring it home, oh, yeah. So this flat area around here, you know, it holds your chisels, some hardies, your blacksmith brush, usually the hammers, your favorite hammers, you know, and a whole bunch of the name's not slag, scale, whole bunch of scale dust. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you are able to find a nice anvil when you do get your nice anvil and you bring it home. Try making one of these anvil stands. You know, it'll cost a little bit for the concrete, so it's a lot more expensive than just an old stump. But man, when you get your anvil stand, has got a lot of weight in it, and your anvil's got a lot of weight in it, and it's all set up right, pretty much all the force from your forging goes into the material that you're working, and it makes you a much more efficient bladesmith, blacksmith, whatever it is you're working on. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we will see you next time.